In 2005, a United States Army squad in western Iraq called in a contact report. Enemy fighters on a ridgeline 400 meters out. The squad opened fire with their M4 carbines. The rounds fell short. The enemy knew exactly where to stand. That problem had a name. It was called the range gap. And the United States Army solved it with a rifle it had declared obsolete 30 years earlier. The M14 was supposed to be gone, retired, a warehouse relic from a failed experiment. Instead, it was back in combat, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in the hands of men who had not been born when the Army first tried to get rid of it. This is the story of how a rifle fails, survives, and becomes something its designers never intended. In 1959, the United States Army had a problem. Its infantry was carrying 4 different weapons into combat. The M1 Garand, the main battle rifle of World War II. The M1 and M2 carbines, shorter, lighter weapons for officers and support troops. The M3 grease gun, a submachine gun. And the Browning automatic rifle, the squad's primary automatic weapon. 4 weapons, 4 ammunition types, 4 sets of spare parts, 4 training programs, 4 logistics chains. The Army wanted one rifle to replace all of them. The M14 was that rifle, or it was supposed to be. On paper, the design made sense. Springfield Armory had spent most of the late 1940s and early 1950s developing an evolution of the M1 Garand, the most reliable service rifle of the Second World War. The result was the M14, a 22-inch barrel, a 20-round detachable box magazine, a selector switch for semi-automatic or full automatic fire, a wooden stock, 9 pounds, empty. It fired the 7.62 by 51 millimeter NATO cartridge, a full power round, standardized across the Western Alliance, comparable in energy to the .30-06 the Garand had used in the Pacific and in Europe. The Army believed it had solved the infantry weapons problem permanently. 1 rifle, 4 rolls. What happened instead became one of the most studied failures in American small arms history. The M14 arrived in Vietnam in the early 1960s. The jungle killed it within months. The first problem was length. At 44 inches overall, the M14 was nearly as long as the Garand it had replaced. In the dense vegetation of Southeast Asia, length was a direct tactical liability. Moving through jungle, clearing buildings, operating from vehicles, every inch of barrel became an obstacle. The second problem was weight. A loaded M14 weighed close to 11 pounds. In the heat and humidity of Vietnam, on patrols that lasted days, that weight accumulated. Soldiers were already carrying water, ammunition, food, and equipment. A rifle that weighed twice what a replacement could weigh was not a minor inconvenience. It was exhaustion, and exhaustion in combat is lethal. The third problem was the stock. Wood absorbs moisture. In the jungle, the wooden stock warped, shifting the barrel alignment and degrading accuracy. Fiberglass replacements were eventually developed, but by the time they reached the field, the rifle's reputation was already set. The fourth problem was the one the Army least wanted to admit. The full automatic setting, the feature that had justified much of the M14's design philosophy, the feature that was meant to replace the Browning automatic rifle, did not work. The 7.62 cartridge produced too much recoil for a 9-pound rifle fired from the shoulder. On full auto, the muzzle climbed after the first round. The second round went high. The third went higher. The rest of the magazine went wherever the rifle was pointing by the time the shooter wrestled it back down. The Army quietly locked most M14s to semi-automatic only. The selector switch that had theoretically replaced the BAR was never mentioned in official assessments. The rifle had failed at the role that had been used to justify its existence. In 1967, just 8 years after formal adoption, the Army began replacing the M14 in Vietnam with the M16. Lighter, shorter, firing a smaller intermediate cartridge, everything the M14 was not. By the early 1970s, M14 production had stopped. Existing stocks went into warehouses. Every small arms doctrine of the decade classified it as finished. Here is where the story changes. The qualities that made the M14 fail as a jungle service rifle were not universal liabilities. They were liabilities in a specific environment for a specific role. Remove that environment, change that role, and the same qualities become strengths. Weight means stability on a shooting platform. A long barrel means higher muzzle velocity and better accuracy at distance. A full-power cartridge means energy retained at range, penetration through cover, and the ability to reach targets that intermediate calibers cannot. In 1969, while the Army was still pulling M14s from infantry hands in Vietnam, it adopted an accurized version for a completely different mission, the M21 sniper weapon system. The M21 was the same receiver, the same gas system, the same basic architecture. But the barrel was match grade. The stock was glass-bedded for consistency. It came equipped with a leatherwood adjustable ranging telescope that calculated bullet drop automatically as the shooter ranged the target. In Vietnam, the M21 built a documented precision record that the service rifle had never approached. The weapon was operating in its natural role, deliberate, ranged, accurate fire against point targets, and it excelled. The Marines took a parallel path. M14 variants stayed in service with select Marine units long after the Army had moved on. Honor guards, drill teams, and ceremonial detachments across the American Armed Forces adopted the M14 for formal duties. It was visible at Arlington. It was present at state funerals. Its silhouette became associated with precision and ceremony rather than frontline combat. By the mid-1980s, the M14 had found a stable second life, not a service rifle, a specialist tool. Living in the armories of designated marksmen and precision shooters who needed what the 7.62mm cartridge could do at ranges where the 5.56mm round ran out of authority. That was the rifle Randy Shugart chose when he deployed to Somalia in 1993. On October 3, 1993, Task Force Ranger launched a daylight raid in Mogadishu to capture lieutenants of Mohammed Farah Aidid. The operation went wrong within the first hour. 2 Black Hawk helicopters were shot down over the city. Super 64, piloted by Chief Warrant Officer Mike Durant, went down north of the target building. Durant survived the crash with a broken leg and a broken back. His crew was dead or incapacitated. Somali fighters were converging on the wreck from every direction. Delta Force operators Gary Gordon and Randy Shugart were circling in another helicopter. They could see the crash site. They could see the crowd closing in. They radioed for permission to insert and protect the downed pilot. Denied. They asked again. Denied. They asked a third time. Approved. They were inserted in a narrow alley approximately 100 meters from the wreckage. Gordon carried a Colt Model 723 carbine, the short optics-equipped 5.56 weapon that most of the operators on the mission were carrying. It was ideal for close quarters, fast and maneuverable. Shugart carried the M14. That choice was not accidental. Shugart was operating as a designated marksman, not a door kicker. His job was not to clear rooms. His job was to engage targets at range, through cover, in support of a perimeter around a downed aircraft in the middle of a city that had turned hostile. For that specific role, the M14 offered things the Model 723 could not. The 7.62 cartridge carried more energy further down range. It shot flatter at 200, 300, 400 meters, distances that existed in the open streets and rooftops around the crash site. When it struck a cinder block wall, a vehicle body panel, or a section of light masonry, it had a real probability of going through. The 5.56 carbine required line of sight. the M14 could answer threats that were behind cover. In an urban environment, in a street fight, against an enemy using buildings and vehicles as protection, that difference was not marginal. It was the difference between being able to engage and not being able to engage. Shugart and Gordon fought their way to the helicopter and established a perimeter. For roughly 45 minutes, two men held a position against a crowd that grew into the hundreds. Gordon was killed by rifle fire while engaging targets to the south. Shugart moved to the cockpit. He gave Durant Gordon's rifle and what remained of Gordon's ammunition. He told him, "Good luck." He walked back around the nose of the helicopter and continued fighting with the M14. When the M14's ammunition was gone, he fought with his sidearm. When his sidearm was empty, he was killed where he stood. Both men were awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously. They were the first recipients since Vietnam. Shugart's M14 was recovered from the wreckage. It is on a wall at the United States Army Special Operations Command headquarters at Fort Bragg. It is still there. In 2003, American forces entered Iraq carrying the M4 carbine as their primary infantry weapon. By 2005, units across both Iraq and Afghanistan were identifying the same problem. The enemy had adapted. Engagements in western Iraq and the mountain valleys of Afghanistan were increasingly happening at 300, 400, and 500 meters, beyond the reliable effective range of the 5.56 cartridge. Insurgents and fighters had learned where to stand to be outside the reach of the weapons most American soldiers were carrying. Every squad needed a rifle that could answer at distance. The Army needed a designated marksman weapon, fast, in quantity, and without waiting for a new procurement cycle. The solution was already in the warehouses. In 2004, the Naval Surface Warfare Center at Crane, Indiana, began pulling stored M14 rifles from inventory and rebuilding them in a new configuration, the Mark 14 Enhanced Battle Rifle. Same receiver and action. New aluminum chassis from Sage International with a telescoping stock, pistol grip, and Picatinny rails for optics and accessories. Shortened barrel for vehicle operations. Accurized to a higher standard than the original M14 had ever been held to. The Mark 14 went to Navy SEALs first, then to Army-designated marksmen across Iraq and Afghanistan. The Marines developed their own variant, the designated marksman rifle. By the late 2010s, the M14 in its modern chassis was the most common squad-level precision rifle in American service. It has since been partially replaced by newer platforms, the M110, the M110A1, the CSAS, but the M14 remained in frontline use decades past any reasonable prediction. Today, it is still the standard issue rifle of Republic of Korea Reserve Forces, produced under license since the 1970s. It is still carried by honor guards in Taiwan. It is still in specialist hands across more than a dozen militaries. 66 years after adoption, nearly 60 years after the first attempt to retire it. The M14 was designed to be the last rifle the American soldier would ever need. It failed at that, completely and quickly. But the rifle that failed as a universal weapon became irreplaceable as a specialist one, because the cartridge it fires has never been surpassed for what it does at range. Because the architecture that made it too heavy for the jungle made it stable on a precision shot. Because when a squad in Iraq needed to reach a ridgeline at 400 meters, the answer was sitting in a warehouse in Indiana, exactly where the Army had put it when it decided the weapon was finished. The M14 was supposed to be retired in the 1970s. It was not retired in the 1970s, or the 1980s, or the 1990s, or any decade since. Some weapons are replaced. Some weapons simply refuse to leave.